Hi guys, in this video I want to show you how to make clear gesso. So what you're going to need is some calcium carbonate or marble dust. It can also be called. I got this on Amazon. You'll need a container to put your clear gesso in, and you'll also need some water. So before I go any further, I just want to let you know that I have about 3 or 4 other DIY gesso videos. So the first one I did uses baby powder or talc. The second one uses cornstarch. The third one uses plaster of Paris. So there are reasons for and against to use different ingredients like that. Many people don't want to use talc, and that's fine. I've just done a whole bunch of ones. The easiest one, the cheapest one, and the most convenient one to make for those of you who are just getting started will be the one with talc or cornstarch. So you can do either of those. And I am going to be doing a video talking about the different ones I have here, showing you how they store, because it's been over half a year later, over 6 months later. And so we're gonna do that kind of updated video for you. And I will link all those videos down below, and you can check them out in the description box. So you just click that little arrow. There's a little kind of upside down triangle, and you can click that. The other thing that you may want to use is some gloves, a tablespoon, a quarter cup. This measuring thing here doesn't actually have a quarter cup indicator, so I just have this, and I use the same. This is the same materials I always use to make gesso. I don't use from my kitchen. I keep my art materials separate from my kitchen materials. So yes, I'm going to use gloves. Those of you who have watched lots of my other videos know I don't like to use gloves. And those of you who have watched some of my other videos maybe have commented as to why I'm not wearing gloves. And maybe you've seen some of the comments telling me to wear gloves. So I don't like wearing gloves, but you win. I am going to wear gloves in this one because I don't like the gesso all over. And be happy to see I do have a stirring spoon in my DIY gesso with the baby powder. I have a lot of comments telling me how ridiculous it is that I painted with this part of a paintbrush. Apparently that was very offensive to some of you, so I got it here. The only reason I didn't use it in the other one was because I didn't have it, and I thought I was prepared for the video, and I wasn't. So there you go. Now, you should use a gas mask. Sure, use a gas mask. A dust mask for this, because you don't want this powder to be flying up into your face. That's just not a good idea. For any of these recipes, you should, because it's just probably not the funnest thing to have that flying up in your face. You will need to use some glue. You can use white glue because, as you know, this dries clear. So we are going to do 1 cup of this. And I do not have a cup, so I am going to use a quarter cup, and I'm going to do that 4 times. I am sorry for those of you who have a problem with me doing it this way rather than just getting a cup and doing it, but I don't have a cup for my art supplies. Right now, I have a cup upstairs in my kitchen, and I want to keep that in my kitchen, and I don't want to change it. And yes, I could go to the dollar store and I could get a measuring cup very easily, but I have not done that, and I don't feel like doing that right now. Someday I will do that. Today's not that day. I am sorry for those of you who will become offended that I am doing this 4 times. Okay. Most of my viewers are very, very nice. And definitely my regular viewers are all great. But there's odd people that come across my channel and like to leave weird comments. So I could use this, but then that's all messy for this. So I'm not doing it. Okay. you can leave this to dry and clean it out and then peel it out, or you can go and dry that out, or you can wash this out right now. Whatever you want to do, I don't care. Okay, so now I am going to put a 1/4 cup in here, and this will wash out the rest of the glue. I just didn't want glue and water in this one, but I don't care about glue and water in this one, just so we're clear. So this is barely going to fit in this container, but it should. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to mix this up just by shaking it. And yes, I did clean out this Mod Podge really good. It doesn't have any Mod Podge in it. This is an old bottle, and I just let it sit on the upside down. And then when a bunch of it had gathered at the bottom, I just pulled it out, and it all came out in one big film. Very satisfying. Okay, so clear gesso is generally more runny. It is not as thick as white gesso, like when you buy it. And now we're gonna put 4 tablespoons of the calcium carbonate. So if you think that, okay, well, I wanna make it thicker, so I'm going to add more, that will start to turn it cloudy or white the more you put in here. So we're gonna see how 4 tablespoons works. I am gonna show you, as I said, how this looks, and then we'll talk about reasons why you would even want clear gesso. And I do have a video talking about what is gesso and why you would want to use gesso. Please check that out if you are watching this video and not sure why anyone would want to use gesso. I do have a filter. I don't know where it is, and it's not here, so I'm not using it. And yes, it would be easier to make sure that all of this gets in there, but this is working. It's not spilling all over, and it's not making a big cloud of dust, so it's good. There's just a little bit there. I'm okay with that. We're gonna work with it. So I'm just gonna let that sink in a little bit. So let's just mix this up first. Okay, guys. Yes, I did decide that it would be better to mix this in. I thought it would fit in there. I kind of thought about it ahead of time, and I was like, yep, that's gonna fit, but it's not. And yes, I could have measured it and made sure, but I didn't. So you all can tell me in the comments how stupid I am now. All right, so we've got everything in here. And I do have a scraper somewhere. Not sure where it is right now. So this is mixing up really good. We're going to test this out in a second. And I'm just going to do this. And I think because we've got a good corner there, I think it's going to just go in there pretty easily. Pour in there pretty good. If there's lumps in there, you don't need to worry too much about it. Just try to break them up as much as you can. You do want to. You can use a whisk if you need to. I'm going to use what's left in here to show you how it works. So I'm not going to worry about filling this whole thing, getting all of that out of there. So I've got this, and as with all DIY gessos and, you know, some manufactured gessos even, you will want to shake this up continually. And I don't suggest for any of my DIY gesso recipes to make a huge batch all at once, unless you actually will need that huge batch all at once. Make up a little bit make up what you'll need. You can use this for white gesso, black gesso. You can put in some paint, a little bit of paint in here, and color that gesso. That will work just fine. So it will change some of the consistency depending on how much color you want to add in there. But yes, you can make all sorts of colored gesso. All the DIY ones that I've done so far have been white gesso, but mixing up a black gesso for this would be awesome. And I will be doing a video of that. But just so you know, it's going to be the same ingredients, just with some black paint. But I will do that video for you. Okay, so the reason why you would want to use clear gesso is to protect a surface that you are going to be working on over top, but say you want to make sure that that's protected and you can still see through it. So I have a couple different ones. There's some water media on here, and some acrylic paint and some pastels, and same as this. These are just art journals. Another reason is if you're using, if you're doing journaling in a book that has words on it, you can protect that, or music, protect that, and then work on top of that, and that will still show through. So the reason why you'd want to use gesso in the first place, I'm just going to go quickly, but I do encourage you to check that out if you need to know. I'm going to put the link right up there. It's going to come across the top. But the reason why you need to use gesso in the first place, just in a quick nutshell, is to prepare your surface for all the work that you're going to be doing on it. So I put gesso on a canvas to prepare it for the acrylic paint, and I definitely do it for any mixed media. You don't use gesso for watercolor, but there's different times that you might use it for that. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually clean that off there. Now, when you use gesso that's already made or that's bought, you don't need to keep using a gas, I keep calling it a gas mask. You don't need to keep using a dust mask. Just for your information. Okay, so you can use any kind of brush. This will work, but I usually use one that I don't really care. Gesso can be quite rough on a brush, so don't use your best brushes on that. So I do like using this silicone because it it scrapes it really nice. Now you can see it's moving this around, which I'm not too worried about because I can just go in and fix it, and that's part of what I wanted to just check. I actually wanted to check because this has been on here for almost a year now, and I wanted to check and see if it would move it, and it is, but it's also making some nice colors. So it's kind of doing a little bit of a watercolor effect. And you can see that this is definitely clear gesso. So let's actually do it on this page here and just see how it works with the brush. Here, I feel like I'm off of the screen a little bit. Okay. So any water media or water-based product is going to move with any kind of liquid, and definitely with gesso it will move. So just keep that in mind. So there's that. Now if I wanted to, I'm just going to get that out of the way here. Poor girl's crying. That's all right. So here's another quick example of how you might want to use clear gesso. So this is going to be a travel journal for Italy, and I'm going to recover this, but I've just altered a hard book. I do have that in a playlist as well, or on my channel. So let's say you wanted to, I'm just trying to find something here. So I've just put in different papers and whatever. Okay, so here. So let's say I was going to be doing something on this, but the work that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be working with a lot of water, and it's going to get really wet, and lots of mixed media stuff, different pastels, different paints, different water media, and it's just going to be a lot on this page. So scrapbook paper, this is cardstock, but it still is not, it's still going to pill up. It's still not protected very well for even just watercolor or just acrylic paint. So if you were to use watercolor paints on here, first of all, it would not behave the same as a watercolor paper, but you wouldn't want to use too much because it will start melting the paper. You know what I mean? It'll start ripping it up. Same with acrylic paint, you want to be a little bit careful. So but you like this pattern, so you don't want to put white gesso on here because you want to, you don't want to whitewash it, which is something you could do if you wanted to whitewash it. You could use white gesso on there. You want to keep this pattern, but you want to be able to work on it properly. So this is what will help you to do that. I'm just going to do this side right away while I'm at it. And then this is done. And you can buy gesso, clear gesso. You can buy white gesso, you can buy black gesso. The reason why you might not buy it is because you can't get it where you live, which is sometimes the case with me. I live in a remote area of Canada, and or it's really expensive, which is also the case with me. It's quite expensive to buy. And I find that many people are like, oh, it's $10 at the blah 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 store. And it's like, well, okay, this is YouTube. I could be in a completely different part of the world than you are, and I probably am. So no, I can't just go to whatever store you're talking about and get it for $10. And also, for those of you who are like, why would you go through all this trouble? I would rather just spend the money and buy it. And there's definitely reasons to do that. And for some art materials, I do that. It's not worth it to me. But some people, it is worth it. And some people actually like to do DIYs. And it's therapeutic for them. And they just enjoy it. They like that creative process. Whereas you might not. You might be like, I don't want to do that. Like, please. And so we're all different. And, you know, that's just the way it is. Okay, so I'm just going to show you. So this is basically dry. I think maybe a little couple of wet spots there. So this is, you saw that this ran quite a bit, but actually it kind of makes a nice color. So that's one way that a lot of people start a journal page, do a background, is they put some water-soluble media down and then use the gesso to move it around, either clear gesso or white gesso. So I'm just going to go in there and define this and whatever. It didn't move anything on this because I don't think this was any water media. There is a few rules for what to do when you are like working on a journal or, you know, Bible journaling. This is great for Bible journaling, by the way. You don't want to have gesso here and then apply it here before this is completely dry. Like, it might feel dry here, but on the inside of the paper, it might still be wet. So if you put gesso on here, then that kind of locks in that wetness and then it starts to become bad and whatever. So you do want to make sure that this is completely dry and cool to the touch, or room temperature, sorry, before you go in and do this side. You can do both of these and just lay them open if you want. So don't close your journaling pages and leave it if they're not completely dry. Like, I am going to let this stay open now for a while, just in case there's still some moisture on the inside here between these two. That needs to dry. So one way you could do gesso to make it not move is you can just take a sponge. There is sprays you can do, and those would be a lot more convenient. Even hairspray. Hairspray works great for any pastels that might move. So spray sealers work good, just a light spray, and then you can kind of go over it with something more thick or whatever. So I have done that, where I spray it so that it's just kind of set there, and then I work on top with a gesso or whatever. But you can also do this and just pat it. So that will give it a little bit of texture, which you may not want. And you do have to be careful, because if it picks anything up and then put it there, it'll move it. So these are just a few different ways. This is one of the ways. So if you just turn that a little bit, you don't get quite as much of that, but I'm still getting movement there. So I actually go to the cheap part of the dollar store, which is the whole thing. And especially when I use pastels, I do a quick spray on this with just some cheap hairspray. And you want cheap hairspray. You don't want stuff with oils or vitamins or anything. You want cheap hairspray. And that works really great as a sealer for any of these. And then you can go over it with, once that dries, go over it with some gesso, and that should be good. But always test when you're using gesso, any kind of gesso. If you're putting it on top of something that you want to keep there, you need to test it just to make sure, because you never know. And for me, I use so many different medias that by the time I'm done a page, I don't remember sometimes if I've even used water media on a page or not. So this page here, I put some on. Now this is part where I'm assuming the bits of little calcium carbonate didn't really get broken up. So you have that. I mean, that's fine. But you can see that it is totally clear. And even some of that sparkle, it still shows through. So it doesn't take away that. Just make sure that you do get those little bits. If you have them on your page, just work them out really good. And that's where that scraper, the scraper would come in really handy because it'll get rid of them really well. And so now this page is ready for me to work on, and it's more protected, it's more thick, and it's going to work a lot better for me to put all sorts of stuff on there. So I hope that helps. Also, do label your clear gesso because when you open it, it's going to look the same as regular gesso. So you won't really be able to tell what is clear and what's not. So I am going to label this, and I will see you on the next video.